I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting for Thursday, June 2nd. If everybody please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard?
Here.
Member Garza?
Here.
Member Peters?
Here.
Member Estrada?
Here.
Member Dugan?
Here.
Vice Chairman Benedict?
Here.
Chairman Miller?
Here. I hope. All right. Changes to the agenda. Director, we have any changes to this evening's agenda?
No changes, Mr. Chair.
Fantastic. Approval of the minutes. Everybody get a chance to review the minutes from last meeting?
Move to accept the minutes, Mr. Chairman.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? All right. So, consent agenda. So this evening, we've got, 3 items on our consent agenda. Each item is considered to be routine matters and will be enacted by one motion and with a second and a roll call vote by the commission. So if anybody from the public is here in regards to an item on the consent agenda, they have the ability to have it pulled from the consent agenda as well as anybody from the commission. And so at this time, I will open it up to ensure if anybody would like to pull an item from the consent agenda. Seeing nobody, I would entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move to approve the consent agenda for this meeting on June 2nd.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yeah.
Vice
Yeah.
Chairman Benedict?
Aye.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. Motion approved. All right, so moving on to new business. So for new business, just to kind of go through a few things, the staff will present an agenda item. Once that presentation is complete, the commission will get the opportunity to ask any questions of staff. Once that's complete, we will invite the applicant and/or their representative to come forward. They can add any additional information, clarification, as well as field any questions that are pertinent to their project. Once that's done, we will open it up to the public to give anybody here from the public that would like to speak to an agenda item an opportunity. And then if there is any specific questions that you have, we will wait until the public portion is done and come back so we can bring up either staff and/or the applicant to answer those questions. So bear with us if you don't get your question answered immediately, but we'll try and get it done before any motion is moved forward on the agenda item. So with that, we will open up the first item under new business to hold a public hearing and consider forwarding a recommendation of approval to the City Council for a request by the City of Casa Grande Planning and Zoning Development Department for a zoning text amendment DSA-22-00-107.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. As you know, planning staff from time to time propose to make modifications to our land use regulations as things change and our regulations become outdated. And so for this item, staff has taken the initiative to completely rewrite our parking standards in our zoning code. It's known as Chapter 17.56. Many of these parking standards have been in place in this zoning code since at least 1987 and possibly later. And so as you all know, there's been a lot of changes in technology and types of land uses and parking demands. So we thought it was a good opportunity to really take a look at a total rewrite for our parking codes. And also, after this item, you're going to hear a proposed modification to our access management standards, which are really connected at the hip to some of our parking regulations as well. So we needed to make sure that we modified both regulations together so they weren't any conflict between them. So a little bit about the objectives that we really tried to achieve with this modification for this code. One was really just to limit the amount of paid parking that's provided to a level that is adequate, but really not excessive. So we wanted to look at that. And kind of related to that, we wanted to reduce the adverse impacts of really providing too much paid parking. As you can see it from the photo on the screen, the percentage of the land that's actually utilized for parking in this section of Florence Boulevard, it's kind of amazing when you look at this. It's probably the highest percentage of the use of each site. And as you can see from the photo, much of that parking it really isn't utilized at all. So providing too much paved parking can increase the urban heat island effect, especially on days like today when it's 100 degrees and that asphalt continues to radiate heat late into the evening. Increases the stormwater runoff because you don't get any infiltration of stormwater into the ground. And of course, needlessly increase development costs, which is not good for the developer and not good for the consumer or the community. Other kinds of objectives we were looking at was to really encourage the provision of electrical vehicle charging stations. We actually looked at the possibility of making provision of electrical vehicle charging mandatory for large parking lots. We decided not to do that, but instead to really encourage it and to create some standards for those businesses and developments that want to provide electrical charging, and we gave them credit. If they provide electric charging stations, we'll give them credit against the parking required. And so we developed some standards and guidelines for that. To provide parking for bicycles, scooters, and other alternative modes of transportation, staff routinely does require bicycle parking on lots of developments, but we really have no specific code basis for that. So we created a fairly simple code for that. I have companies right now that want to introduce electric scooters into Casa Grande, but really we're concerned about where they're going to park them and how will that work. And so we wanted to start thinking about parking for electric scooters and other alternative modes of transportation. We needed to create specific design requirements for drive-up lanes, for uses for good queuing for drive-up lanes. Of course, we have some really bad examples in Casa Grande of that. The worst one is probably the Little Caesars on Treckle, where they back up the drive-up lane, queues out into the through lane occasionally on Friday evenings in the fall especially. That's not good design. Little Sombreros across the road is also very bad. It blocks the through lane on Florence, but that's kind of historic. But we wanted to be consistent with some good standards for our drive-up lanes and order boards. We had a number of general plan action steps in our new general plan that really talked about modifying our parking regulations to better implement the vision of the general plan. So we took a look at those and made sure that we were tried to implement those to as much as we could. We wanted to simplify the requirements and make them easy to understand. We wanted to update our requirements to reflect best current practices. And lastly, we wanted to reference the updated access management standards document that I mentioned that we'll be hearing next. Some of those action steps in the general plan would be the city may reduce or eliminate standard parking in the downtown land use category to promote higher level pedestrian and multimodal transportation activity. And we did address parking downtown. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that on some things that we did in the downtown that is not allowed in other parts of the community. But the downtown does have a very unique parking kind of situation. Again, another action step is to revise parking standards for the downtown core, recognize the unique nature of parking demand, and multimodal nature of downtown customers, which address the use of shared parking, on-street parking, transit, autonomous vehicle, drop-off, pickup, and public parking lots. Another action step to reduce or eliminate parking requirements in our community corridor land use category to promote higher level of pedestrian and multimodal transportation, encourage development in the community corridor to include facilities for electric vehicles. So kind of a common theme in both our community corridor and our downtown land use categories. So some of the specific revisions, and I'm not, you all have a copy of the new code, which had some tweaks made even as late as today to reflect some comments we received from the stakeholder process and some other tweaks suggested by our legal staff. But I'm just going to cover generally some of those revisions. And if you have any questions about the specific provisions, I'm happy to answer them and address them. But no parking requirements were increased. Across the board, we didn't increase anything. We did reduce some. And in a lot of cases, we reduced parking because, again, we want to strive for adequate parking, but not excessive parking. We did introduce the concept of a maximum parking standard that says that you really can't provide more than 200% more than what you're required to provide. So if you're required to provide 100 stalls by the code, you can provide 200, but we really don't see, we think our standards are pretty good in terms of really addressing the actual need for land uses, and trust me, we've compared them to lots of other communities. We know where we're at with other communities. We're kind of right in the wheelhouse with that. So we don't see there's any need to provide, over 200% of the code minimum. We did encourage developments with large parking lots to provide electric vehicle charging, and we had those specific locational criteria, as I mentioned. Here's something that you should like, is we made the process for approval of secondary drives and circular drives administrative rather than requiring planning commission action. So no longer will you see those requests for secondary drives on your agenda. We have standards for those in this code. If you meet the standards, we approve you. If you don't meet the standards, then you won't get approved. There's always the process for an appeal of administrative decision in our code, but generally we think that we can handle those administratively with no problem at all. For the downtown area, and when I say downtown, it's not maybe the downtown as you think of it today in terms of the B3 zoning, but it's the downtown area of the general plan, the land use category, which is a little broader, actually goes like 1 block north of Florence. We have provided provisions to allow parking requirements to be met through on-street parking and public parking lots. So, you still have a parking requirement, and you can certainly provide it on your site, but you can provide some on your site, you can provide it some on the street within so many feet of your business, you can provide it in public parking lots. You just have to provide like a parking scheme, a parking plan for our review and approval that shows how, we think that you really are going to be able to provide adequate parking for your patrons, but it all doesn't have to be on your site like it would normally have to be for other areas of the city. We actually do have an exemption for existing commercial buildings with less than 7,500 square feet from off-street parking requirements, except for accessible parking. They do have to provide some accessible parking, but other than that, there's a requirement they can provide it all in the street or in public lots. We actually have a concept of a payment in lieu of fee if a development can't meet their parking requirements on-site or off-site. We're going to create a concept where they can pay a certain amount per stall to the city. The city will escrow the money for purchase of future public parking lots to build public parking in the area of the downtown. So it's a fund that allows us to construct future public parking to help meet that demand. So that's a summary of my presentation, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you might have about the specific proposal.
Questions for staff?
I just one. I should probably notice, Director, myself, but those charging stations it showed a picture of the Tesla, are they universal?
I don't know. The city recently built 4 stations here on this campus. I don't know if you know that. They're over on the west side of our campus, and I think those are universal stations that we built. We have 4 here in this facility.
Paul, they are. You just have to have the right adapter for your car, and then you put it on the end of that and plug it into your car.
Okay.
So they are
I know over at,
universal, and Tesla has decided to start opening them to other manufacturers
yeah, 'cause
for a fee.
over at Culver's, Tesla has got those over there, but I only see Teslas there.
In the past, that was the way that it was run. It was just for Tesla vehicles, but Tesla has made a decision to open it for other electric vehicle. It would just be for a fee.
And Joe's a Tesla owner, so he can attest to that.
There's still a fee for me, too.
Okay, then we asked the right people here, that's all.
Kohl's has some
Thank you.
generic, I don't know what I'll say generic, but a different brand besides Tesla. Kohl's out at the mall as well. Anyways, any other questions for staff? Comments?
No.
Grabs, grunts, or moans? No? Really? How did you get the asphalt on top of those cars?
You'd have to ask Joe, I don't know.
The only other thing, there's not you'd made a comment, but I didn't see it, so then I was trying to read through in regards to, say a site wants to add, or you said something about if they wanted to add an electric parking station, they would get some sort of,
Yeah,
so like if I add one, I can get rid of 2?
No, it's just if you add 4 electric charging stalls, those 4 get counted towards your other, your normal required stalls.
Your 25 total?
Yeah, whatever
It's
your
not-
number is.
You don't have to do it in addition to?
Right,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
Yep.
Perfect. I just wanted clarification on it. Nothing else? Since you're the applicant, I will then open it up to the public. Would anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? You guys aren't all in? Yeah, by all means, please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
My name is Antonio Joe, and the name is 2121 East Power Avenue, Arizona. And my question is, for the future, the automatic fuel car is not only for electricity, and right now, hydrogen car is also start to appearing in the United States. Do you prepare for that facility?
I'm sorry, did we prepare for what?
Hydrogen
Oh,
charging
hydrogen.
station.
Hydrogen stations?
Yes.
No, because I'm not familiar with the technology, so the answer would be no, we have not addressed that. But I guess if someone did propose to create one, I would treat it just like an electrical charging station, right? I would allow that to occur and give it the same standards as the electrical charging station.
Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Paul, can I weigh in a little bit on that, too? Hydrogen's delivered differently. It's delivered more like a traditional gas station. So they would set up pumps and things like that, so it would go through a site plan process most likely, unless it's a private hydrogen station at a company, and then they'll still set up hydrogen pumps on their site. That's what I was thinking.
Anybody else from the public like to speak to this agenda item? All right. Well, then with that, I will close the public portion. That means I bring it back to the commission for you guys to. Sorry, I thought it was assumed.
Mr. Chairman, I'll move to forward a favorable recommendation to City Council to adopt the ordinance repealing and replacing Chapter 17.56 of Parking Access in its entirety.
Second.
All right, motion and second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard,
Yes.
Member Garza,
Aye.
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict,
Aye.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. All right, next up. Number 2, hold a public hearing and consider forwarding a recommendation of approval to City Council for a request by the City of Casa Grande Public Works Department to approve and update the City of Casa Grande Access Management Guidelines, DSA-22-00110. Mr. Itel.
Thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about why do we need good access management, a little bit about our current access management policy and what the differences between that and our new one, and some examples of access management. Mostly good, I hope. Where do I? This one here? Okay, great. I think I'd learned by now. wouldn't you? So, our current access management standards started in 2001, and then we updated them in 2007 in the Small Area Transportation Plan. Really haven't done much to them since then. So we were looking, there's some things in there that we knew needed to be changed. And so a few years ago, we hired Wilson and Company to look at revising our access management policy, and they looked at other cities and compared a lot. An interesting thing is our draft is what the county used to do their current access management standards. So they beat us with ours. So why do we need good access management? Well, we want to make traffic flow well, we want it to be safe, and we want businesses and homes to have access to the road. But this changes depending on what kind of road is it. With a freeway, you don't really want any access other than interchanges. When you get to an arterial, you want more access than a freeway, but still not very much. And then you get down to a collector and a local street, and that's where you get a lot of access for businesses, homes, and so on. So let's talk about crashes a little bit. As you can see with the one chart there on the left, talks about access points per mile compared to the crash rate. So the more access points you have, the more chances you have for a crash. Some of these other illustrations illustrate that also. Look, the one over on the right, it shows 11 conflicts. And then if you look down at after access management, you have 6 conflicts. So you only have 6 places there might be a crash versus 11. And then if you look at a full access intersection, it has 32 conflict points. So there's 32 chances of having a crash. So part of this is to try to reduce all that. How do we do that? Of course, raised medians, joint driveway cross access, we'll talk about that a little later. We're really pushing for a lot of that to eliminate too many driveways. And of course, frontage roads and different things. This is a simulation showing you good access compared to bad access and how much different the traffic flows. Whoops. So normally I'd have a mouse to click on this to make it work.
I saw it moving earlier.
Maybe go back one more.
There you
There you go. So you look at the top, the traffic is the same on both of these. On the top, there's just good access management, raised medians, less driveways. On the bottom, lots of driveways, no raised medians. Like I said, the traffic is the same on both of them. But the good access control really works a lot better.
Is that Florence Boulevard on the south? On the bottom?
Well, we modeled it after Florence Boulevard. You know, we always call Florence Boulevard a parking lot. And if it had better access management, it would be a lot easier to drive down it. Not to say that it doesn't back up even with good access management, but a lot less.
Mhm.
So here's an example of the difference. Without access management, that lower one that we looked at carried 5,300 vehicles in a mile and a half, and travel time for a vehicle was 9 minutes in that mile and a half. Good access control, we were able to get 8,900 vehicles through, and 6 minutes of travel time. There's a big difference there. Said earlier, we have to worry about what kind of facility it is. You know, each facility is going to have different access control standards. Spacing between driveway is really important, and the distance from intersection corners. Hopefully, we never have any traffic like shown in that slide. So these are the new driveway spacing in the new manual. So on a principal arterial, which is our 6-lane roadway, 3 lanes in each direction, and the new ones we're building all have raised medians on them. So we would allow a right-in, right-out at 660 feet, it's an eighth of a mile, and full access at a quarter mile. Minor arterial, 450 feet for right-in, right-out, and a quarter mile for full access. Collector, 150 feet for right-in, right-out, 150 feet for full access, although we recommend a full access at 300 feet. And then local, we don't have to worry really about right-in, right-outs. The full access somewhere around 30 feet. So what was the old guidelines and what are the new ones? The old ones for principal arterial was driveway spacing 200, 275 feet. Now we're looking at 1,200 feet for full access. Well, 1,320 for full access. Minor arterial was 150 feet, 100 to 230. Now we're looking at 450 to a quarter mile. Collector wasn't defined. And now we're looking at 100 feet minimum, 300 feet preferred. And a local, there was nothing defined there. We're now looking at around 30 feet. Also, we changed the guidelines a little bit for corner clearance. If you think about you're driving down the road and you stop at a traffic signal and the signal turns green and you go through, and just as you get on the other side of the intersection, somebody's making a right turn into a driveway, you know, so then everybody behind you has to slow down or stop or whatever. So you want to get those corner clearances to be bigger than what they are. So that's what this is. Next we're going to have a few examples. So on the left is example of driveways with the 2007 standards. As you can see, they're closer to the intersections. They're not quarter mile apart or eighth of a mile. That's, you talk about Florence Boulevard being a parking lot. If we'd have had good access control 30 years ago, you know, we'd be a lot better off. However, we didn't. So how does this work on different developments? Here's an example of a development where we run into some issues is if it's broken up into different plots. So one's not quarter mile. You go a quarter mile, there might be a couple properties in between that quarter mile and the intersection. So there's where the cross access comes in handy and try to get different ideas on how to get the access. Here's an example where we had a couple right-ins, right-outs on Treckle and one right-in, right-out on Courtson. So then we looked at it some more and we thought, well, how about the 2 right-in, right-outs on Treckle and a full access up on Courtson? And then even, how about the full access on Treckle and a right-in, right-out on Courtson? So what I'm trying to show you here is there's lots of different ways to make this work. And there are ways to, we say it has to be full access a quarter mile. There are ways in the system to do something less than that if it's a safe thing we can do. So we study it a little more. But we start out with a quarter mile and eighth mile. Here's another example of one that the access on the McCartney wasn't at the quarter mile point. And so they get a right in, right out, and then a full access up on Tucker Road, and then a cross access between the properties. Here's an example on Florence Boulevard. When this development first came in, they had 6 driveways there on Florence Boulevard, which we thought was a little excessive. And so, working with them, full access at the quarter mile point, right in, right outs at the 8th mile point. Same over on Hennis, and then cross access in between those. So next, I'm going to talk about traffic impact analysis, or TIAs. That was one of the things we noticed right away in the existing standards. There's some things that needed to be changed. So of course, when you do a traffic impact analysis, you're looking at what kind of roadway it is, traffic volumes. We try to count traffic only when the winter visitors are here, school's in session, no holidays, no road construction going on. We work real hard to really find out what the traffic really is. So what's the difference between the current access guidelines and the new ones? Of course, we tried to customize them more for Casa Grande. The current one requires a TIA when development hits 100 trips per day, which is a really small amount of traffic. So that changes to 100 trips per hour, which is pretty common throughout the industry, 100 cars per hour. And of course, the study area changes based on the development size. If it's a real small development, you're looking at their driveways and maybe some right next to it. It's a little bigger than you're looking down at the closest intersections. Then a really big development, you might be looking miles in each direction at signalized intersections and so on. And of course, there's other things you look at. We don't seem to have a lot of horses around, but there are a bunch of golf carts and things. So you look at all these things relate to the traffic impact analysis. It's not one size fits all, is what I'm trying to say. The other thing we did was we have a traffic impact analysis checklist. So the developer fills out this checklist, sends it to us, we review it, and that way we got some early communication going on back and forth, so they don't get way down the road on their traffic impact analysis and find out there's something we're not going to accept in it. So this helps a lot for them, and it makes us understand what they're doing a lot better. And with that, what are your questions?
All right, we got any questions for staff? Celeste. Member Garza, sorry.
Chairman, Dwayne, I was just, I was trying to get into the weeds of this. Is there a requirement to align a driveway regardless of spacing to the opposing driveway if it exists?
Well, Mark
I
would
know
like this
that would be a
answer, and it
challenge.
depends. So we look at that and we make a decision. We don't say everyone has to be across, but, if it makes sense, that's what we do.
Okay. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was a guide.
That's where we start.
Okay. No, I think it's a great document. I mean, I think it's a long time coming. It needed to probably happen 15 years ago, but yeah, it's great. I think it's a great document.
I wasn't here 15.
Any other questions for staff? And you're not allowed to ask Dwayne until start date, so. Questions in regards to the agenda item?
None.
No question? I have a question. In the standard, when you are determining medians and things, that's on the, you put that on the developer if it required it in that section, moving forward on their half street?
So, well, it's kind of hard to build a half street with a median.
I know.
So we work around that, but let's say it's a 4-lane roadway that needs a median, but they're only building the 2 lanes. So we want 1 lane in each direction and maybe a 2-way left turn lane. We'll have them build that. Then when the other developer comes in, we'll
construct the median and everything at that time.
Okay. I was just trying to think through developments like Treckle moving forward, you know, as we've talked about different things and how that lays out in our,
So I think
Streets.
Pier really shows we're really working hard to try to use these access management standards on Pier. So from
oh, they fly down that road.
Florence up to McCartney, it's closely match this.
Yeah,
But we have to make exceptions now and then.
sure.
There's a methodology in here to do that. We try to say yes. It's not always easy to do.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions?
So the burden does still fall with the developer, just depending on timing, which side of the street they're on? Or would it be constructed with the city project where you guys took a cash in lieu payment for the median improvements? I hate to see us have all these requirements and then the development community still doesn't have to build the medians. And then it falls on the city.
Want to help me on that?
Dwayne's like, I just
always
engineer
like
it.
to
I'm not talking about who's building, I just engineer it.
So I understand the concern, and, you know, as Dwayne articulated, the first developer making his half-street improvements would not build the median, obviously, in his scenario, but the second developer on the other side of the road would, which means he would have a greater burden than the first developer, right? So how do you offset that? That's kind of the question, I guess, we're wondering about. You know, we could require financial security or contribution from the first developer for half his median that we just escrowed in an account for, that we could apply to that in the future somehow. So, you know, I guess I'm going to come back with another code here in the near future about building half-street improvements. So let me address that when I come back with that code amendment. And I'm sure we can think through that a little bit more and come up with a good solution.
In regards to this, and you brought up the concept, I remember Treckle and Courtson. I remember multiple site locations, and we actually went through a lot of this. You guys talked about a lot of these practices with that potential developers prior to the existing one that's been approved. And I'm curious, you encourage cross-access,
Yes, we do.
but we can't mandate cross-access. Because I don't have to give my neighbor, right? I mean, is that,
So our legal staff will tell you that that's probably true, that we can't mandate because it could be construed as a regulatory taking. However, that doesn't mean we have to approve the development because it may have poor access. Without cross-access, we may say the access simply doesn't work for that land use. So we could deny the development application due to inadequate access.
correct. I guess I'm looking more of the second person developing. Unless I guess the first development had to agree prior to allowing them to build that they would give access to the.
So if it's a retro situation, it is more difficult. You're
Yeah.
right, where that one property owner has to go to the other one and say, hey, would you grant me cross-access so I can access your, onto the arterial through your property?
Sure.
Yes, that would be a negotiated thing.
Yeah.
But for a greenfield site even, we probably can't require cross-access, but we can consider that as part of whether or not we have adequate access to the development.
We've had pretty good luck with that on the new developments, like you
Yeah.
said, a greenfield area. Most good developers understand access is important.
Sure. Oh, but yeah, I mean, I think it behooves everybody involved typically if it's done right as well. I think a great example was the Florence Whataburger, potential other site, whatever it may be, and then the build to rent. That was a really cool kind of,
And we have some more of that type of thing coming
Yeah.
in that area.
do you have a comment? Oh,
Not at this
anybody
time.
else? Oh, all right. Well, then at this time, if there's no other comments for the staff and applicant, I'll open it up to the public. Anybody like to speak to this agenda item? Yeah, by all means, come forward. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Andy Welleman. I'm at 1548 East Fontana Drive. And this section brought a question to mind that I think is appropriate. I'm pleased that the city has put in left turn trailing green lights, trailing left turn at the end. And I think it's smart, and I think it makes things safer. And I'm curious if there's a plan to do it throughout the city, because it's only some intersections.
Great
Well,
question.
Some years ago, we had about 50% leading left turns and 50% lagging. I think we're down to, I'm not sure where there's a leading left turn that the city controls right now. I think we've got them all
Okay.
pretty well gone to lagging.
So I would assume then from what you're saying is if I find one of those that's not in the actual city limits, that's a leading,
Yeah, you know, a lot of the signals, ADOT and the county have signals that
Okay.
are in the city, but they're still,
but they control them.
we don't control them.
Okay.
Although we work closely with them.
All right.
All the new ones we're making have lagging left turns, and we, even at Peart and Florence Boulevard, during certain times of the day, we have both leading and lagging
No?
to
Okay.
try to get the left turners through the intersection.
All right, thank you.
Anybody else from the public? By all means.
I will introduce myself again. My name is Hyung Yeol-jo from 3121 East Howell Road in Phoenix. My suggestion is all the city in the East Valley has been changed their mind from water saving to plant trees. So right now, Mesa is planting lots of trees along street to create more shade. And even Tempe, I used to live, they put some more Chinese pistachio trees alongside the highway. That make a city scenery better. Could you, Casa Grande, do it in the future?
So, thank you. I think that'll be part of a different agenda topic as far as the landscaping or beautification of it. For the agenda item, it's just the ingress and egress of entering and exiting business or roadways.
So,
Yeah, so within medians and things like that, which we've done throughout the community, but go ahead, Paul.
So another project that staff is working on is a complete rewrite of our landscape code. And Joe's actually the lead planner on that. And we're going to bring that back to the planning commission yet this year for a complete review of our landscape standards, medians, and private property as well, public right of way as well.
Okay. Anybody else from the public like to speak to this agenda item? All right. Then I will close the public portion. Bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chairman,
Yeah.
I move that we consider a positive recommendation of approval to the City Council for a request by the City of Casa Grande Public Works Department to approve and update the City of Casa Grande Access Management Guidelines, DSA-22-00110.
I'll second that motion.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard,
Yes.
Member Garza,
Aye.
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. All right. Next up, public hearing and consider of request by D.R. Horton for a conditional use permit, DSA-22-00092, and associated resolution.
D.R. Horton's requesting a conditional use permit for a model home sales complex for Phase 2 of the Gila Buttes community. You can see it highlighted in yellow below. Just a quick overview of the site. So it will be just one house and some parking, and then they're going to utilize another area for some construction parking as well. When we look at the review criteria for conditional use for the model home, we look at the following criteria. Tonight, we're just going to concentrate on one aspect of that. All the rest were covered in your staff report. The main concern is that the proposed use will have no adverse effect on abutting property. So in this case, there will be minimum impact on the abutting properties as they're currently all developed and are construction sites for new homes. Furthermore, the sales complex has the appearance of other single-family homes, and off-street parking will be provided so as not to burden the streets with parking that this use generates. In regards to notification, we met or exceeded all requirements for the city, and we did not receive any comments. In conclusion, staff recommends the Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit and associated resolution for the model home sales complex within Gila Buttes, subject to the following conditions. Those are the conditions that we place on all model home sales complexes throughout the city, and they haven't been modified. Can I answer any questions?
Questions for staff? No questions. No questions. All right. Not a lot of questions tonight. At this time, then, if there's an applicant and/or a representative, I would offer them the opportunity to come forward. Seeing nobody jump up, I'll open it up to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Striking out on this one. All right. I'll close the public portion and bring it back to the commission.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion.
All right.
Recommend the approval for conditional use permit of association with resolution DSA 22-00092 for a model home sales complex within the Gila Buttes, subject to the following conditions set by staff.
Second.
Awesome. Motion and second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. All right. Next up, public hearing is get and consider a request for approval by Raising Cane's Restaurants, Inc., and PM Designs for a conditional use permit, DSA-22-00104.
Good evening, Planning Commissioners. So this is a conditional use permit request for Raising Cane's. A little bit of background about this site. In 2014, Planning Commission approved the major site plan and a conditional use permit for Raising Cane's. And Raising Cane's opened in May of 2015. A conditional use permit is necessary for convenience food restaurants within the Mission Royale Planned Area Development Zone District. And one of the conditions of that conditional use permit was that the business could not be operational between the hours of 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. the following day. The request is to modify the conditional use permit to allow the business to stay open 1 hour later following Sunday through Thursday nights, so otherwise midnight instead of 11 p.m., and then 2 hours later on the weekends following Friday nights and Saturday nights, so therefore it'd be open until 1 a.m. versus 11 p.m. When reviewing conditional use permits, it's subject to meeting all of these criteria on the screen, and the staff report dives into each of these in greater detail. I'm just going to focus on a couple of them. The first is that the site for the proposed use is adequate in size and topography to accommodate the proposed use. A lot of that went into the analysis during the first conditional use permit request for this convenience food restaurant. We looked at whether the site itself was adequate with regard to what was situated around the site. This is a view of the residential neighborhood to the south of the commercial site, so that sits to the left. And to the right is the commercial area where you could see the back of the Raising Cane's building. There's a 6-foot block wall that divides the residentially zoned area from the commercially zoned area of the Mission Royale PAD. And within that landscaped area that's divided by the wall, there's about 140 feet of depth. Although in the skinniest section of it, it's about 90 feet. When reviewing conditional use permits, and what was looked at the first time was code requirements such as there's a minimum distance between structures and a residential zone, and that minimum distance requirement is 50 feet. And in the case of Raising Cane's, 104 feet is provided from the nearest structure, which would be the dumpster, to that block wall, which divides the commercial area from the residential area. And then there's also a requirement for 15 feet minimum between parking areas and a residential zone. So in the case of Raising Cane's, 64 feet's been provided, where 15 is the minimum. And really, when you look at the distance between structure, the commercial structure to residential structure, there's about 315 feet. The other criteria that I want to talk about is that the proposed use will have no adverse effect upon the abutting property. And I think that's what the largest concern is here when evaluating this conditional use permit to extend hours. What staff looked at was the number of code enforcement complaints and also calls for police service that have occurred in recent years. So from the opening of Raising Cane's to the present time, there's been no code enforcement violations called in. So that would be things like weeds, trash in the parking lot, different uses that occurred on the site that weren't otherwise approved. In the past 2 years, we looked at the number of calls for police service, and from 2020 to present, there's been 19 total calls. However, more than half of them were just alarm calls, and so that could be an employee mistyping the code when locking or unlocking the store. And so only 9 between 2020 and now were more serious calls, such as a threats call or a fight call that occurred this year. The last criteria I want to talk about is that the conditions stated in the approval are deemed necessary to protect the public health, safety, and general welfare. So one of the things that we looked at with that criteria is whether or not their condition to extend hours was appropriate. And we felt that by extending it just in 1 hour 5 days a week and 2 hours 2 days a week would still help, or would really not contribute, rather, to an incompatibility concern. We did provide public notification as the code requires, and it met that which was required by code through mailing of public notice and posting in the newspaper and a sign being posted on the site. We did receive a letter expressing opposition to the request for the extended hours. It was received by a homeowner along Santiago Trail, and they had purchased the home about a month ago, and they did have concerns that the extended hours would exacerbate the noise heard from trips to the dumpster, vehicles, etc. However, staff felt that with the 300 feet plus distance between structure to structure, and the minimum request to be 1 hour later for their operating hours 5 days a week and 2 hours later 2 days a week was fairly minimal. So we are recommending that Planning Commission approve the conditional use permit and its associated resolution, subject to the condition that the business shall not be in operation between the hours of midnight and 7 a.m. following Sunday through Thursday nights, and shall not be in operation between 1 a.m. and 7 a.m. following Saturday and Sunday nights. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? Seeing no questions?
Can we go back to your plan, your aerial view, so to speak, of the, that's good. So the HOA is in charge of landscaping on the south side of the wall?
Correct.
And then on the north side, who's responsible for the north side of the wall?
I'd have to look to see exactly who owns that tract because it stipulates in the ownership, but my guess is that there's a property management association that the different commercial businesses contribute to, and with that pool of money, a landscape company's hired to maintain that area.
Their own HOA. So.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thank you.
So the HOA of Mission Royale, they determine the hours of all these businesses?
No.
The HOA didn't determine the hours of the businesses, but when Raising Cane's came in for their request back in 2014, due to the location of it being near residential, there were hours of operation stipulated in there as a condition of approval. It was a recommendation by staff more than it was feedback from the residential community.
So in theory, we could just motion to approve a conditional use permit to operate a convenience restaurant there without the restriction.
Correct.
And that way, so they were approved with a restriction and we're trying to modify the restriction.
Correct.
Any other questions?
I'd give them 24 hours a day. You need restaurants to be open 24 hours a day. That's me, so.
A little bit later, you're going to have an opportunity to make a motion.
Yeah, okay. Make amendments.
Can we?
Any other questions for staff? No questions for staff? Okay. At this time, applicant and/or their representative like to come forward? Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you very much. My name is Chuck Bennett. I'm with PM Design Group, and address is 76 East Mitchell in Phoenix. And I'm just here to answer questions if you folks have them for me, so I'll just keep my peace until then.
Any questions for the applicant?
I have one. I'm sure that the client had a market study done or something that's driving this, that they feel that there's a need for that extra 2 hours on a weekend?
So Raising Cane's is currently building a lot of stores throughout the country, and currently they've discovered a need more for extended hours due to the fact of like police, fire, hospital workers, second shift workers. In fact, the stores that we're doing now for them and then other places across the country, they're open till 3 a.m. 7 days a week. So they didn't want to overstep anything in this store, knowing that the stipulation was already in place. So they just want to try to increase the hours to tend to those needs of of people as they've been experienced in other locations as well.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? No? All right, hey, thanks for coming.
Yeah,
Joining us this
thanks for having me.
evening.
Appreciate it.
Question, just for clarification, Jim. Across the street, other convenience restaurants, conditional use permits, correct?
Are you talking about on the north side of
Yeah.
Florence Boulevard? So Chairman Miller, that's actually within the Promenade
Right.
Planned Area Development Zone where
It's not required.
quick serve restaurants is not subject to a conditional use permit. So those were permitted just simply with a major site plan.
Okay. Thank you.
So, follow up to that, so the other businesses on this side, though, they may have a different type operation of hours depending on how the conditional use permit was approved, when it was approved.
That's correct.
But they may not have a conditional use permit because if it doesn't designate their type of, so Walgreens, right? I think that's a Walgreens there, isn't it?
Yes.
Could be open 24 hours if the PAD didn't require them to have a conditional use permit.
And you're correct. The only other use right there that would require a CUP is Culver's, and that currently is also 11 PM.
You could buy a gun 24 hours if they wanted to stay open. All right. I'm going to jump out to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Seeing nobody, I'll close the public portion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the staff recommends that the commission approves the conditional use permit associated resolution DSA 22-00104, extending the hours of the operation for Raising Cane's with the condition of the staff.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? No discussion? Not even about removing it entirely?
Can we
I
remove
think the
it?
lawyer might have a rule with that.
Can we remove it?
Yeah.
I'd open
We
it
can
24
approve,
hours.
we can forward the recommendation however we want.
Let's
Or
recommend
approve it.
removing it.
Sorry, no, we can approve it however we want.
Well, let's recommend removing it.
You,
Well, that's what they asked for, so you're giving them what they asked for.
But what if,
then they come back.
and what about the other, not Raising Cane, what's Culver's?
Culver's just have to come back for their own, because theirs is entirely separate, so.
Chairman, I have a question.
Yeah.
So, Jim, is this related to the PAD? This is not related to the conditional use permit? So does the PAD dictate the hours of this commercial corridor?
No, the only thing that the PAD requires is that quick serve restaurants, which is defined by either a drive-through or a type of business where you pick up the food from the counter and there tends to be disposable serveware, et cetera, is subject to a conditional use permit, but it doesn't stipulate that the hours have to be limited. It's just subject to a conditional use permit where, as staff and with planning commission consideration, the current CUP as written did implement hours.
Okay.
Did
leave it open.
the cafe ask for more hours, or is this what they asked for? Did you ask for more hours? Would you rather be open 24 hours a day? Did they ask for more hours than what they were requesting here?
No, the discussion that was had with the applicant was that they'd like to extend their hours by an hour or two. They
Okay.
didn't express the interest in
Okay.
being open 24 hours.
Okay, got it.
Our legal counsel has made a point.
Yeah, well, I just wanted to point out that the public notice that we gave out did specifically list the hours. So we probably are kind of limited to that for tonight. You know what I mean? If it was more generic, you guys can obviously make any conditions you want, but because of the notice, we may want to just,
The notice that was mailed out? The notice that was mailed out?
yeah, and it's how it's noticed on the agenda.
All notice, paper notice, mail notice, all of it, right?
You just need to
Look at the-
quit putting so many words in your notices.
And so if the commission really is inclined to, you know, remove the hours of operation restriction, which I know that's being discussed at some level, you could probably table this, we could re-advertise it in a different way and bring it back to you, if that's what the applicant wanted to do, not to have any hours of restriction.
I'm gonna let
Hours
the
of
applicant
operation.
decide.
Pardon?
I'll let the applicant decide.
Yeah, but I mean.
You can decide, you go with it the way it is, or you wanna give 24 hours?
Procedurally, that's sort of what we would have to do.
Well, if we have a motion and a second on the table, so I'm just curious of his opinion of, it's currently ready to be voted on.
I'm gonna ask, I don't think there's anybody from the restaurant here, is there? Is that something you'd want to entertain? To increase the hours beyond what we've asked?
Yeah, you sure can.
Could we ever come
I
to
have
the
a call for the
podium?
question.
Could we have the speaker come to the podium? Because we have to get this in the minutes, if you don't
I
mind.
have a call for the question.
I
We're gonna
know,
vote.
But we still need to have, if she's gonna talk, we probably need her on the minutes, right?
Hi,
No.
I'm Jessica Pickett. My address is 1529 East Palo Verde in Casa Grande, Arizona. I am actually the restaurant leader at the Raising Cane's, and we would like to see these hours. We would be grateful if you decided that we could be open longer, but we didn't want to overstep, seeing as how close we were to the community, and we wanted to make sure we protected them also. So that's where we were at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Not really sure how many laws we're breaking with public comment during discussion, but that's all right.
Close the public.
Natalie, would you please call a roll?
Member Hubbard,
Yes.
Member Garza,
Aye.
Member Peters,
Aye.
Member Estrada,
Yes.
Member Dugan,
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict,
Yes.
Chairman Miller.
Yes. You weren't ready for that one, were you? You just never know what you're gonna get in these meetings. Remember Garza, we just taking a break? Apparently.
Call for a 5-minute recess.
Yeah. Okay, well, one of our members left, so we're gonna take a short recess, apparently. We'll be back in a moment.
By the way.
One member just left.
That's fair. Meeting back in order. All right. Next up, public hearing and consider forwarding a recommendation of approval to the City Council for a request by EMC Management LLC for DSA-22-00013 for a zone change.
Hi, good evening. And the next item on the agenda is a zone change from Plan Area Development, Commercial Office, and R3 to PAD for a medium-density residential located on approximately 17.69 acres on the southwest corner of Cottonwood Lane and Pert. As you can see on the right is the existing zoning map. Here's what the proposed zoning map would look like as a PAD. And it's currently for a proposed 209-unit build-to-rent community with an approximate density of 11.81 dwelling units per acre. Here's the conceptual site plan that is currently under review and will be coming to the Planning Commission at a later date. So in reviewing the PAD, here's the criteria that staff reviews, and the staff report goes into additional detail. I will be highlighting the first three items here in my presentation. So one of the first things is the relationship between plan elements to conditions both on and off the property. To the north of this site is the Hancock Build-to-Rent project that's currently under construction. And to the west and south are single-family developments. And to the east is an Arizona Water Company site. So this is considered a good infill project of this type. And the next slide will go into additional detail on this as well. With regards to the city's general plan, this is within the community corridor land use category and allows for PADs and multifamily residential at a gross density of 25 dwelling units per acre. This proposed development, as mentioned, is at 11.81 dwelling units per acre, meeting both the community corridor land use category as well as the PAD standards for medium density. One of the goals of the community corridor is to promote high-density residential uses along urban corridors and near major commercial centers. And one of the action steps is to encourage higher development residential developments on infill sites and along key corridors. With regards to the city's zoning ordinance, this will be subject to the 2021 residential design standards. These standards cover various criteria for multifamily residential and also includes a 25-foot setback from the single-family residential site to the west and south. And this also includes a 15-foot landscape buffer. This will be highlighted in additional detail when the major site plan comes in. But this site also includes a trail for the community along this area as well, within that landscape buffer. With regards to notifications, an application and review were sent to property owners and the HOAs within 300 feet earlier this year. Notices were published in the dispatch as well as mailed out last month, as well as a sign posted on the site, and I did not receive any comments or inquiries to date. So with that, staff recommends that Planning Commission forward to City Council a recommendation to approve the zone change request, DSA 22-00013 from R3 Commercial Office and Plan Area Development to PAD Medium Density Residential with the following condition of record. So happy to answer any questions the Commission may have.
Questions for staff?
I'm just so disappointed that it's not commercial. This is such a busy intersection, and it would benefit from some commercial at some point. But it is what it is. Just a comment.
Any other questions? No questions?
On the right spot, there's two other, on the east side, there's two other corners that are bare right now, right?
Mm-mm. Talks.
On the north, you have the
Arizona
bungalows.
Water Company has that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that one is right next to Caliche.
Mhm.
The
It's
small corner there.
neighborhoods.
Oh, yeah.
It's, and then there's a small portion in that Arizona Water because they didn't take up the full lot, but there's,
Chair, I believe the catty corner is zoned B1.
yeah.
And then there is commercial zoned within the G Diamond PAD at the, would be the southwest corner of Pert and Courtson, just north of this site.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
No.
Okay. Then at this time, would the applicant and/or a representative like to come forward, speak to the agenda item?
Okay.
Chairman Miller, members of the commission, thank you. I'm Tom Galvin with Rose Law Group, also here with Sherry Koschel, Senior Project Manager. Want to thank staff for their diligent hard work and the very thorough and very well-prepared presentation. I'm going to try to replicate that in many ways that we're going to go through here. And as you can see, there's no amendment needed here for the general plan. This is a community corridor that's actually called for in the general plan. I know that Member Garza earlier talked about a desire and expression of need for commercial, but as you saw, those are located on the two hard corners on the eastern side of this intersection. What we're doing here is just adding another housing option to this growing area. As we obviously know, housing is a very hard need right now all over the state of Arizona, but especially here in this area. And what you see here is planned is a great neighborhood community, beautifully laid out and planned. This is a good transitional use between single-family homes to the south, as you heard earlier, and Cottonwood Lane, which is a key corridor. This will be providing a multi-use trail along the western and southern boundaries in that 15-foot buffer that you heard about earlier. And as you can see, that's where they'll be located. This is a trendy housing community, and it's all single-story, no higher than 20 feet, in an absolutely growing area of the city. The total open space will be about 51% of the 18 acres, so at least 9 acres here tonight you'll see is for open space. The common open space is 33.5%, which exceeds what the city calls for, and the usable open space is a total of 89% of the common areas. There's an abundance of amenities, as you can see here, and I can just go down the list, but some of them that I want to highlight include a car care station, electrical vehicle charging stations, a package concierge, nightly trash valet, and a pet washing station, among all of these others. Thank you. We also have photographs tonight that we'll be able to pass around if you like as well, that I think would be helpful.
Does anybody have any questions for the applicant?
None.
No? All right. Well, that made your life a little bit easier, didn't it?
Thank you, Chairman.
All right. At this time, then, I'll open it up to the public. Anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Yes, my name's Mike McBride. I live at 1440 East Douglas Street, which is directly to the south of that, just on the other side of the wall. And instead of being here to complain about getting all these things in, I'm here in support of it. It'll be a lot nicer to have this big thing sitting here with trees and all that than it is the dirt lot that's currently there. I had hoped in the past, when I'd moved in there, that there would be a QT or a Circle K on that corner, but I understand that those things don't happen in the middle of neighborhoods, and it probably is better off that we have housing there. And there still is room directly across the street to the east of it, that commercial, I believe, is zone commercial right now. So they could get something like that in there, but we wouldn't be able to drive to it and turn in it anyways with all of the way the roads are constructed. There is no way out of our development to turn left in there anyways. But I'm very happy with it, and I'd like you all to support this. Thank you.
Anybody else from the public like to speak to this agenda item?
Hello. My name is Nancy Wood, and I'm at 513 East Beckel Road in Casa Grande, Arizona. And I don't have anything about saying anything about the development or the project specifically. A lot of these are much needed for Casa Grande, and I support development. The one thing that I do want to bring to the attention of the developers is that at this location, which is the corner of Cottonwood and Pert, there are a number of family of burrowing owls that are at basically all the corners of that location. And so as they're developing the property and the site, that I wish that they would look out and keep the safety of any of the owls that might be on their property. It's just one of my concerns because the central area along Cottonwood and to the east, north, and south is kind of a central area where there are a lot of burrowing owls that have lived in the area for a long time. And just as the development comes along, you know, they've been using this territory for hunting and living, and there are a lot of family at this time of year. Sometimes there's 7 or 8 baby owls in a burrow and such, and there are a number of them in that location, in that area, so that I hope that they can watch out for them as they're doing their development and do a site survey to see that whether there might be any burrows there as they do groundwork. Because the biggest danger for them is getting impacted by cars running over them, equipment running over them, people stepping on their burrows, which puts them at risk. So otherwise, I appreciate the development, and I would like to see that they just look out and take care of the wildlife as they do that. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Anybody else? Please come forward.
Hi, my name is Nancy Cosentino, and I live at 1545 North Chester Court. I just have some questions. I'm not sure if these are condos, if they're apartments. I don't know what they are.
Apartments. It's an
They're what?
apartment. Apartments.
They're apartments, okay. And how many apartment buildings will there be?
So
How many?
there's 209 units being proposed. It's not a final plan, so we don't know exactly, but that's what's currently being proposed.
Okay. And if this goes through, when do they know when they'll start building? No, it'll be whenever. Okay, thank you.
They may be able to, well, I'll have them come up. They may be able to give you a rough timeline, but
Still too early.
before I have you come up, let me make sure there's nobody else from the public that has any questions, comments. Okay, so I'm going to close the public portion. Would you like to come forward, maybe talk a little bit about timeline, what your goal is, thought
Yes, please.
process?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, members of the board, I just want to address the points that were made tonight in order, and they were very good ones. So Ms. Wood asked about the burrowing owls. Actually, we have a plan to deal with that. We have hired a consultant to deal with that. And so if it arises a situation that they need to be moved, then that will occur in a safe and environmentally conscious way. So I'm glad that she brought that up because we do have a plan for that. And then Ms. Constantino had a couple of questions, and she asked what type of homes it will be. And, you know, this is a new kind of community, right? This is what we call living simplified. So it's not exactly apartments in the classic sense of the word apartments, because these will be single-family homes. These will either be one-bedroom homes that will be duplexes, or 2-bedroom homes, or 3-bedroom homes. So they will look like single-family residential homes. And then in terms of timeline, if everything goes according to plan, our expectation is to break ground this fall with the most optimistic expectations. Thank you.
Commission.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the Planning Commission forward a favorable recommendation to City Council to approve the zone change DSA-22-00013 from R3 multifamily residential, commercial office and plan area to plan area development, PAD, medium density residential with the following conditions of the staff.
Second.
Everybody wanted to second that one.
Yeah.
I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict?
Aye.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
Six.
All right. Double stacked agenda item here. So we have public hearing consideration to consider approval of a request by Cohen Van Loo Consultants for two items, DSA 22-00095 for a minor general plan amendment and DSA 22-00038 to consider forwarding recommendation of approval to the city council for a zone change.
All right, so the first request is a minor general plan amendment. It's 5 acres going from neighborhoods to the community corridor land use category, and just south of this is 18 acres going from community corridor to neighborhoods. The second request is a zone change for 33.79 acres, and it's going from PAD and R2 to PAD for commercial and multifamily residential land uses. So here's, the first map shows the general plan, existing, and then the proposed, and then here's the existing zoning map, as well as the proposed zoning map as well. So in reviewing the minor general plan amendment, there's 2 items to look at. General plan amendments with less than 10 acres, regardless of land use categories, can be done as a minor amendment. And community corridors going to neighborhoods are classified as a minor amendment. So both of these meet that requirement. And as you may be aware, minor general plan amendments can be requested at any time throughout the year, and it's usually done in coordination with a zone change as well. So reviewing the general plan criteria, the staff report goes into additional detail on this, but here are the 7 items that are described in the staff report, and staff finds that this request meets these criteria. With regard to the PAD review criteria, again, the staff report goes into additional detail on all of these, and I will be looking at the 3 highlighted items. So with regards to the relationship with the plan elements, the site will consist of 11 acres of commercial at the corner of McCartney and Pinal, and 22 acres for medium-density residential. Just to the north and west of this site are existing commercial properties, and there is a proposed single-family residential to the east and south for the McCartney Ranch subdivision. This is currently in review and will be coming to Planning Commission shortly. So with regards to the general plan, again, this will be within the community corridor land use category and allows for 25 dwelling units per acre. And in addition to that, the community corridor encourages mixed-use development sites like this as well. With regards to the zoning ordinance, again, it will be the multifamily area will be subject to the residential design standards. And as part of the PAD, the applicant is requesting a 15-foot setback from the adjacent streets. And this is a recommendation in the general plan for development within the community corridor areas that staff supports. With regard to notifications, staff met or exceeded the requirements, and I did not receive any inquiries or comments to date. So with that, staff recommends the Planning Commission forward to City Council recommendation to approve the minor general plan amendment, DSA 22-0095, for 5 acres from neighborhood land use category to community corridor land use category, and 18 acres from community corridor to neighborhoods. And staff also recommends that Planning Commission forward to City Council a recommendation to approve zone change request DSA 22-0038 from McCartney Ranch to PAD and R2 to the villages at McCartney Ranch PAD with the following condition of record. So happy to answer any questions the commission may have.
Questions for staff? No? All right. Applicant and/or their representative, like to come forward? Speak to this agenda item? Thank you for being here and being patient towards the end of the agenda here.
It was my pleasure.
All right.
Mr. Chairman, members of the Planning Commission, my name is Kurt Johnson. I'm with Cohen Van Loo Consultants. My address is 4550 North 12th Street, Phoenix, Arizona, 85014, and I am here to answer any questions that you may have.
Questions for the applicant? I'm gonna start asking if you have any questions for the applicant before I call them up. So- Nothing? All right, well, hey, you made your night easy tonight, all right?
I love it. Thank you for
All
your
right.
time. Thank you to staff for all your assistance as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you. At this time, then, I will open it up to the public. Would anybody from the public like to speak to this agenda item? Yeah, please come forward. State your name and address for the record.
Mr. Chairman, ladies and gentlemen of the board, my name is Jimmy Butler. I live at 2542, we recently moved, 2542 East Abbey Road in McCartney Ranch. Like I said, just having recently moved here, I've noticed a great disparity in commercial properties on the northern side of town, and so I'm kind of interested in maybe helping move that along a little bit for some of the developments that are happening out there. And I was curious that you had a paper or a page that showed how it was divided up, and I couldn't read the legend from back there. But now that I'm closer, I can see it. So the very corner is dedicated to commercial?
Correct.
Okay. That pretty much answers my question.
Great.
All right.
Thank you. Thank you for being here this evening.
Thank you for your time.
Anybody else from the public? Going once, going twice. Close the public portion, bring it back to the commission. Go to the last page, just so that way they got that.
I'm going to read it. Make the motion?
If you feel moved.
Mr. Chairman.
Go.
I move that the commission forward a favorable recommendation to City Council, approve the minor general plan amendment DSA-22-0095 for 5 acres from the neighborhood's land use category to the community corridor land use category, and 18 acres from the community corridor to neighborhoods, with the following conditions of the staff.
Second.
Second.
Motion and a second, and then a second.
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 All right, any discussion? Hearing none, Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we forward a favorable recommendation that City Council approve the zone change request DSA-22-000038 from McCartney Ranch to Pad R to R2 to the villages at McCartney Ranch Pad with the following conditions of the staff.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, Natalie, would you please call the roll?
Member Hubbard?
Yes.
Member Garza?
Aye.
Member Peters?
Aye.
Member Estrada?
Yes.
Member Dugan?
Yes.
Vice Chairman Benedict?
Yes.
Chairman Miller?
Yes. All right. Next up, last chance, call to the public. Anybody want to come say something? Come on up. Now's your time. No, we've got somebody coming up.
Hi.
Hey, how are you?
Okay, good. Name is Nancy Wood, and 513 Speckle Road. And actually, what I wanted to come up and say was a big shout out and thank you to the Casa Grande PD. And this is in relation to the graduation ceremonies at the Vista High School that happens last week. And the reason that I wanted to give a good shout out to the Casa Grande PD and the parking staff and the people that ran the event, it seemed like a really nice event, is that one of the things that came up that night was that apparently there were people that was over parking, and they ended up starting to park in the vacant area across on Arizona Avenue. And that happens to be a place where there are a number of owl families. And one of the things that was, I didn't know about it. It's just something that I was checking on my owls as I go around and do that during the evening in the city. And I was just like, there were cars parked all over, and the burrows were in danger of being crushed, and that probably close to 30 owls in that area at this time, because it's the egg-laying season, nesting season, and that. So, great shout out. I brought it to the attention of the people at the event, and they did a big help in letting the people know that we're there, that the owls were at risk. And myself and another rescuer, we staked off the area, stayed there for basically 3 hours and such, and helped keep the area safe for the owls. There were a burrow that I know that did get impacted. I had to dig it out, or they would have been trapped inside. And it isn't anything that anybody has any knowledge about, because, you know, this just, it looks like an open field, and they don't know, you know, that the owls are there. And the people that we did bring up to try and watch out were really grateful. The people in the city really do love the owls. And so it was just a thing I wanted to bring up to the planning and zoning, and that maybe in the future, there's some way of maybe identifying, you know, locations where there are owls that could be at risk at an event like this, and that we could do things ahead of time rather than just kind of haphazardly trying to do it. We did an awesome job, and it ended up being out a good thing. So I would like to see whether that's a possibility to plan for maybe events like that. So thank you very much, and again, big shout out for everybody that was there. They were awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
And a big congrats to all the grads. It was a cool night. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
I need to say my name again.
Please say your name, so that way they can go back and check the address on it. Just so.
Andy Welleman, 1548 East Fontana Drive, Casa Grande.
Thanks.
I'm confused. I came specifically regarding item E2, the Hillstone development, and I came through the door at 6 o'clock, but apparently I missed that.
So that was on our consent agenda, and so when we went through our consent agenda and offered the opportunity for anybody from the public or the commission to remove anything from the consent agenda, so they're considered ordinary routine matters, and so anybody has the right to pull it from the consent agenda, but nobody did, so it just was approved with E1, E2, and E3 were all approved together at the same time with no presentation.
All right.
So
First
sorry about
meeting
that.
I've attended, I guess I didn't follow.
Yeah, no, sorry about that, but thank you for being here.
And sir, if you really have questions on that, the planner for that was James Gagliardi. He can get with you and share whatever information you have if you need, okay?
Anybody else from the public? Closing the public portion. Moving on to planning, reports by the planning director.
Quick question on the owl issue. Can we bring that up to council? Is that being brought up to council?
They get our minutes of every meeting.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, you can call one.
So the first thing I have to report is a Board of Adjustment decision. The board did meet and to consider a variance for a side yard setback for an existing carport that did not meet the required 5-foot side yard setback, and the board did deny that variance. The council considered a proposed zone change for the crossings PAD that you recommended approval of, and they did approve that. And one thing I don't have on the agenda, but a report on, is the consideration of the Spanish Trails PAD amendment that has been postponed by the request of the applicant, and I believe it's now going to be scheduled for the July 18th planning council meeting to give the applicant an opportunity to meet with the neighbors and try to address their concerns.
The Board of Adjustments decision, they have an appeal process.
To Superior Court, I believe. Is that right, Mark?
I believe that's true. I don't think there's any appeal to council or anything.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't.
I mean, I haven't reviewed it in a while.
Yeah,
So
I'm
it's
just
just going off
curious.
memory, so don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure that's the case.
You're
It's not the
so
council.
quoted in the minutes. It just says a heads up. You've been quoted.
Doubly quoted. Yes. I believe that's the case, yes.
Gotcha. Okay. I'm just curious. Thanks.
I have an announcement. This will be my last time on the executive board. I'm stepping down after this meeting tonight. I just, last couple of weeks, I've had some major health problems, and I'm working on them primarily the last couple of weeks. I spent a lot of time at the Mayo Clinic, and so I have to address those. I'd just like to say I've been on this board for close to 5 years. I enjoyed every minute of it. I hope I can come back here at some point at a later date, but I want to thank Paul and Chairman Miller and everybody on the board here and all the commissioners, because I really enjoyed the arguments and everything else. It was a lot of fun. Especially when we get in arguments. That's the best part of the whole thing. That's what it's all about. So I really want to to staff. So I hope I get through to some of the problems. I don't want to go into detail or anything else, but I appreciate all the staff and all the help people have given me. It's Mr. Miller's wisdom. So
Look at him. Hey, what a guy.
okay. So thank you guys very much.
Thank you. Well, I've enjoyed serving with you, and
Yeah, I'll go from there.
there you go. Well, good luck to you on that. And,
Okay.
and entertain a motion.
Make a motion to,
Oh, yeah. You have a question on staff report?
Yeah.
Okay.
On the building permits, are we seeing a trend of permits issued? Or am I making it up? Because I can't remember from one time to the next.
So we're seeing a bit of a downward trend, slowing, yes. I just was looking at, you can see 76 last month, but calendar year to date, which means over the last 5 months, 518, so we're still averaging about 100 a month. But, that's probably about the number, 100 a month, 1,200 a year.
That's right.
There has been a little downward trend the last few months. I don't know if it's a blip or a trend, a
Or
long-term
interest
trend.
rates.
Thank you.
Okay. We make a motion to adjourn.
Motion.
And, Mr. Miller, just to confirm, I just looked it up, but it is appeal to Superior Court. Just to confirm. Just
a
let you
guy.
know.
and so quoted.
Snuck it in before the adjourning too, man. What a guy. I appreciate that. Motion?
I second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Adjourn.